How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation, around the world, via the internet. You can listen wherever you are on planet Earth and beyond if you have an internet connection out there among the stars by texting Eric to 33777, ERICK. You can. You can also call and be a part of the show, 877-973-7425. I pray for your forgiveness for citing her. Not a big fan, but she does have insider connections. God help me. Laura Loomer has tweeted that as of an hour ago, the Saudi investment fund has pulled all of its money from Live Golf. We'll see where this goes. Now, let me give you the straight truth about the Straits. So, let me paint a picture for you here. I routinely say, and I stand by it, that while I have a lot of issues with the president and his character and even a lot of his 1950s pro-union economic policies that I just think are bad, the tariffs, government stakes in private companies and things like that, just bad. There is a lot that I do like about what he has delivered. And he and I oftentimes have to agree to disagree on some of his antics and things. But it is nice that he will occasionally acknowledge that, yes, I will say nice things about him. And it is part of those things that I say. A lot of it relates to his foreign policy. He has a rather grown-up foreign policy. And a lot of you who do not like the President of the United States will insist it is not him or it is by accident. It doesn't matter to me because it's under his name and he's carrying it out. Maybe it's Marco Rubio, maybe it's Vance, maybe it's the hidden hand, maybe it's the Bilderbergers, maybe it's the Illuminati. I don't know, but it's a pretty grown-up foreign policy in many ways. One of my concerns about the J.D. Vance worldview in his team, and I shouldn't attribute it to him, but it is the people around him, they privately whisper that we as a nation are in decline and we need to do something to prepare for our decline. And I just think that that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think we're in decline, you're going to operate as we're in decline. But part of that mentality goes to the idea that we should essentially let China and Russia fight over the rest of the world, and we want the Western Hemisphere. And I hope that Marco Rubio is the angel on the president's shoulder telling him decline is a choice and we should not choose to decline. That China is actually a nation on decline. A lot of people think China's on the rise. China's on decline. China is declining. Economically, China's declining. Their birth rate is in collapse. Their military can't actually field an aircraft carrier that functions well. A buddy of mine who is an officer in the American Navy says it's widely cited in the American Navy that China has a Timu Navy. They can't even field a nuclear aircraft carrier or submarine. It's a Timu Navy. Everything they make actually breaks and falls apart. Their nuclear missiles turned out were fueled with water, not kerosene. The graft, the greed, the corruption. It's why Xi keeps firing generals and the like. The president has a grown-up foreign policy. And one of those issues with the president's foreign policy is understanding the importance of the Straits. Not the gays versus the Straits. The Straits, the geographic features, the narrow bodies of water in which ships sail. Let's start with the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz gives you access to the Persian Gulf. To get in and out of the Persian Gulf, you must go through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran controls the entire northern portion of the Strait of Hormuz. The southern portion is controlled by the United Arab Emirates and Oman, mostly Oman, but partially the United Arab Emirates. All the northern sides, and because of the geographic feature of the water channel within the strait, Iran controls the entrance and exit points due to the flow of water and the deepness of the strait. The deepest channel within the Strait of Hormuz is within Iranian territorial water. You have to sail past their islands. So what have they done? They've built up airfields and military on these islands, and they can scuttle any ship they want. So what did the United States do? The United States navigated a new path out of the Strait of Hormuz that is outside of Iranian territory, further away from them, and they're protecting ships. And then the Americans have gone in, and they've blockaded Iranian ports. Iran is on the verge of economic collapse because the United States has now imposed an embargo on Iran's embargo. Iran says, we're embargoing the Straits. You cannot get in or out without paying us. And the United States says, all right, we're going to block any ship that pays you. We're going to block your ports. No ship can go into your ports. No ship can leave your ports. No ship can carry Iranian oil. Iran's entire economy at this point is cut off from the world except through the Strait of Hormuz, and the United States just cut off the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is on the verge of collapse now. It's going to have to suspend oil production. It's going to have to suspend oil production because Iran produces a lot of oil. That oil flows into reservoirs, and from the reservoirs it flows to a number of islands wherein it flows into oil tankers who take it out of the Persian Gulf. If the oil can't flow from the reservoir to the tanker, the reservoir fills up. If the reservoir fills up, you can't keep pumping oil because there's nowhere to put the oil. So then you have to shut down the oil facilities, and it takes a little while to bring them back up to speed, to get them back up and operational. The Strait of Hormuz is cut off from Iran now, and the United States has carved a path out of the Strait of Hormuz, protecting ships from Iran. And what is the result of this? Iran has come back to the table, begging to cut a deal with the United States now. And also, oil prices are down because ships are actually not only leaving the Strait of Hormuz under American protection, but the United Arab Emirates has built the pipeline to the Gulf of Oman, well outside of Iranian territory. Saudi Arabia has built the pipeline all the way across the country to the Red Sea, well away from Iran, and the Iranians can't stop them now. But it's not just that strait. There's another strait. We like the straits. There's something called the Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca is a narrow, highly congested body of water. The Strait of Malacca is where Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia meet. It is a body of water that flows from the Gulf of Thailand into the Bay of Bengal, into the Indian Ocean. You have two ways to get from the Pacific Ocean to the Indian Ocean. You have three, but one is more treacherous. The first way is the Strait of Malacca. And the Strait of Malacca goes through Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia. It is a highly congested, highly navigated body of water. Hundreds and hundreds of ships a day go through the Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca pours out into the South China Sea from the Bay of Bengal. On the south side of Indonesia is the Timor Sea. And in the Timor Sea is something called the Pesco Passage and the Timor Deep. The Timor Deep is between Australia and the nation of Timor and the Indonesian islands. And the Timor Sea, the Timor Deep, and the Pesco Passage is the alternate route. If something happens in the Straits of Malacca, in the Strait of Malacca, you go through the Timor Sea. And then you can go around Papua New Guinea, but it's a hike. And the reason it's a hike is because if you try to then sail out of the Timor Deep through the Timor Island and the Indonesian islands, there are a lot of islands. You got to make a lot of turns, and there is a lot of very shallow water there. The Banda Sea has a lot of underwater mountains. It's a dangerous place to chart for ships with a lot of cargo to try to get up then to the South China Sea. It's a whole lot easier to go through the Strait of Malacca, which then opens to the Java Sea, which then opens to the South China Sea. Now, you can chart around the Strait of Malacca if you want and go around Bali and up through the Philippines if you want to do that. You have multiple routes once you get through the Straits of Malacca. Once you get past Singapore, you got lots of routes into the South China Sea. There's a problem. Indonesia is an archipelago. There are lots of Indonesian islands. You have Malaysia, you have Singapore, and you have the Philippines. All of them are American allies. And the United States of America has just signed a defense agreement with Indonesia. Did you hear about this in the media? Probably not. It's like the Israel-Lebanon situation. The American media is not really highlighting the Israel-Lebanon peace negotiations, and they're not really highlighting the Indonesian deal with the United States because it is strategic brilliance and it makes the Trump administration look good. By controlling the Strait of Malacca with the help of Singapore and Indonesia, and by controlling the Timor Deep with Indonesia and Australia, and by controlling the Strait of Hormuz by blocking Iranian access, the United States has just taken control of every Chinese trade route to Southeast Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. Let me say that again for you. With our alliances with the Philippines, Singapore, Indonesia, and our control of the Strait of Hormuz against Iran, the United States now controls every access point that China has to get to the other side of Southeast Asia, to get to India, to get to Africa, and to get to Europe. Every trade route China needs to go west is now controlled by the United States of America. Donald Trump did that. Pete Hegseth negotiated the deal with Indonesia. Because what the Trump administration knows that the American media doesn't seem to understand is that there is growing antagonism in the Eastern Hemisphere towards China. The Vietnamese are communists and they don't like China. They would prefer to trade with us. The Malaysians do not like China. The Thais do not like China. The Thais have territorial issues with the Chinese ever encroaching on their territory. The Indonesians really don't like the Chinese, and the Singaporeans positively hate the Chinese. The Singaporeans are essentially a refuge outlet for wealthy Chinese to escape China without going to the West and putting their families in stake. There's a major Chinese diaspora in Singapore of wealthy Chinese people who hide in Singapore to escape the clutches of the Chinese communists. The Philippines are allowing us to arm the northern Philippine islands so that we could target missiles for Taiwan should China invade Taiwan. Look, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to hear this on ABC, CBS, NBC, probably not CNN, and certainly not MS Now. You're not going to hear about this much in the New York Times or USA Today or any of the other major newspapers in this country. The Trump administration has just put itself in a position to have the United States control every access point China has for trading west to Europe, west to Africa, west to India, west to other parts of Southeast Asia. The United States military now controls those routes. Have you heard about that in the press? I bet you haven't. We have pushed China out of the Western Hemisphere. We have helped the election processes in South America, in Peru and in Chile, where the Chinese-backed candidates have now been ousted. We've deprived China of cut-rate oil from Venezuela. We've deprived China of its ability to help Cuba and have Chinese satellite surveillance posts inside Cuba. We have now cut off China from its Western trade routes without our permission. We've deprived the Chinese of Iranian oil. There's an oil tanker that left the Strait of Hormuz the other day with oil bound for China, but it got filled up in the United Arab Emirates, and it got filled up in the UAE, not at a discount rate. In the last 60 days, the price of diesel in China has gone up 37%. The Chinese military doesn't have nuclear aircraft carriers and submarines. They all run on diesel, and we've just driven up their price 37% in 3 months. As the Chinese economy is still crumbling and its birth rate is in decline, what we're doing against Iran is also hurting China. And the press corps insists that China is coming out of this stronger only because they have a fever dream hatred of Donald Trump. Happening now, U.S. Central Command just released this audio. Listen to this. This is on Marine VHF 16, which they say is the international hailing channel for ships at sea. This is from Central Command.
The U.S. has announced a formal blockade of Iranian ports and coastal areas. This is illegal action. All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure, transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance. Now.
That's it. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure, transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around or prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. That message has been transmitted by U.S. naval vessels on Marine Channel 16 for international hailing, and the United States Navy is insisting it will use force. 8 ships have thus far tried to ignore the United States and been turned back to Iranian ports. Nothing is leaving or entering Iranian ports at this moment. This is the 3rd day of this operation by the United States military, and Iran is now asking to resume conversations with the United States. We are crippling their economy in real time. They said, we're going to block the Strait of Hormuz, and Donald Trump said, we're going to block your blockade. They didn't see that one coming. Let me tell you about Perfectly Snug and their mattress topper. A lot of you keep asking what it is. So it's like, I guess you know the foam pads that you sometimes get to add extra cushion to your mattress? It's like that, except it's got ventilation channels and wiring in it so that you can cool it down or heat it up without, I've seen some of these things I've looked at in the past. They have like water channels and stuff and they can leak. This one doesn't. At the base of it, there are a couple of fans, and you control it with your phone with an app. It has Wi-Fi built in, and it pumps cold air through the mattress topper at night to cool you down. It can regulate your body temperature at night, so it can heat up or cool down through the night as you want. I've really enjoyed it. I was a customer of theirs before they're an advertiser, like so many things I tell you, because I want to like the product. And then like, okay, I want to advertise for you. Go to perfectlysnug.com/Eric today, perfectlysnug.com/ERICK. Follow that link. You save big on them. I think $280. They are well priced. I've looked at some of these things. They're super expensive, not Perfectly Snug. It's well priced. It works well. It's like an air conditioner for your bed with summer coming. It's something to think about. perfectlysnug.com/Eric. Hello, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. Today is April 15th. Notoriously, it is tax day. Shooter McGavin pointed out on Twitter that 30 years ago today, Grandma Gilmore refused to pay her taxes and caused her home to be taken away by the IRS, which provoked her grandson Happy to get into golf, ultimately beating Shooter McGavin. There is a silver lining here, I guess. We got Happy Gilmore. Joining me by phone, my friend and the head of American Tax Reform, Grover Norquist. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Eric, doing well. Good to be with you.
So today is every American's least favorite day of the year, and taxes is something that you have kind of made your name killing. And Grover, I'll just start here. I woke up this morning to a bunch of Democrats, all clearly coordinated, tweeting how every American's taxes have gone up because of Donald Trump. And I'm thinking, no, we passed tax cuts.
That's an amazing assertion. Had we not made the Trump tax cuts permanent, if we had not both continued them out another 10 years, but make them actually permanent, we would have, if the Democrats had won the vote, all the Democrats voted don't continue and make the Republican Trump cuts permanent, and every Republican was for it. And if that hadn't happened, there would have been a $4.5 trillion tax increase every decade out into infinity. So we dodged this semi coming right for our forehead, and we didn't get the big tax hike. What we did get was permanent reduction in the rates. The tax rates. Everybody who pays the income tax saw their rates go down with the Trump Republican tax cuts and now made permanent into the future. We haven't had a permanent rate reduction since 1986. When we get them under Bush and again the first term under Trump, they disappear after 5 years and start to go down because of the reconciliation structure that we had to use. And so that was made permanent. We got if you're happy about your job and your pay, the expensing for all new business investment to build new trucks, to fix up a factory, to get everything to make people more productive, they expense that instead of let you depreciate over 10, 20, 30 years, which has the company that hires you paying taxes on the money they spent to make you more productive as if they still had it. They just spent it to make your computer better, your truck and your car and your vehicles better. Huge pro-growth tax cuts. I can't imagine what the Democrats even are trying to pretend to say there.
Well, related to that, you look at Democrats taking control in Virginia, the increased taxes. I mean, you can imagine if Democrats are able to take back power in Washington, D.C., we're going to see massive tax increases, even on the middle class, as they claim they're only taxing the wealthy, because, so many people in the middle class are now becoming members of the upper middle class.
Yes, the taxes they have on quote unquote rich people in California, 14% top rate, but you only have to make $72,000 to be hit with about a 9% rate tax. The reason why Democrats like high taxes on billionaires or millionaires or whatever they're trying to say this year is so that you're supposed to not focus on how high your tax rate is. That's why they like graduated income taxes, because you can divide people into different groups, mug them one at a time.
Yes. It's just part of me thinks that one of the whole reasons that Democrats have dumbed down public education so much is that if we were to ever have a flat tax in this country, they would literally argue to people who wouldn't know any better that the 10% from a billionaire would be the same as the 10% from the poor person, as opposed to actually making the numbers work. It just seems like our system, though taxes have come down, is still such a bureaucratic nightmare that we can still do better.
We can and we are is the good news, because what you just said is projecting not just the future, but the present. 5 years ago, there were 8 states with no income tax, and there were 8 states with a flat rate tax. Today, there are 16 states with a single rate tax, plus the 8 states that have a zero tax rate. So if you recognize that zero is a flat rate tax, as are the others, we have 24 states with a flat rate tax. Today, South Carolina, the governor signed a bill which will, over 5 years, take the top rate of 6%, down to 1.99 flat rate tax, and then go all the way to zero. So we're going to have half the country, half of the senators living in states with a single rate tax. I think you can then have a conversation about why not nationally. Kansas is moving to a flat rate tax. There are 5 states that have actually committed now, passed the law, which will click their taxes down to a zero. Oklahoma, Mississippi, Kentucky, West Virginia, today South Carolina. Everyone running for governor of Georgia has made the commitment to go to zero. All the Republicans in Ohio have made the commitment. Missouri and Arkansas just elected governors committing to phase down to zero. The modern red states are going to single rates and on to zero. That's the future of Republican taxing, and I think that will go to Washington.
Well, it's kind of wild, on the contrary, to look at like Washington State, where their Constitution says no income tax,
I meant the country.
But in Washington State, the Constitution says no income tax. They're like, well, this is going to be a wealth tax, and they just hope that the liberals on their Supreme Court will do their Kafkaesque interpretation of their state constitution.
Washington is a state that's moving in the wrong direction. The good news is it is an initiative state, and there is a great group out there called Project 42, which are all of the grown-ups out there saying we've got to turn this around. They know the legislature's hopeless. They know the Supreme Court's hopeless. As you point out, they put a capital gains tax in, which is a tax on income, and they said, no, it's an excise tax like cigarettes. Really? And then they just put an income tax on income, and they're not even pretending that it's not an income tax, even though the Constitution says you can't. You want lawlessness? That's lawlessness.
Now, let me ask you, because in my state, you mentioned Georgia, we got the Republican gubernatorial candidates all in favor of getting rid of the income tax here in the state. I'm old enough to remember all the Republican governors for over a decade now have been in favor of it, and it never seems to happen. I mean, what does Americans for Tax Reform do at the state level to help people kind of push the legislature and the governors to actually finally get rid of the income tax?
Sure. What we've done is when we first saw this in a number of states, we worked with the people who are doing it and suggested, don't try and do it in 2 weeks or 2 years. This is something that you simply slow the growth of government, and when revenue comes up, usually what they do is they go, oh, more money, and then they spend it all. And they assume that whatever increase is a permanent one. So they spend more really than they could afford, and that's why you have the upward spin. But what you really have is you want to limit spending, not to zero, but so the growth is slow, and that's what they did in North Carolina, the first state to really get this moving. They've been doing that for 12 years. They've cut the income tax in half. They went slow and cautious. Other states have been able to move more rapidly because they've seen North Carolina do it. You don't want to move the tax to something else. You don't want to take the income tax, turn it into a sales tax. That doesn't do you any good. You simply want to limit the income tax.
So, Grover, how long have you been at Americans for Tax Reform?
40 years.
Wow. So, what's if you had like one big insight that you've learned in 40 years of watching states and the federal government go back and forth on this stuff? What's the big insight?
The big insight is that the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which I worked with, Reagan asked me to run Americans for Tax Reform. His administration actually put it together and asked me to run it to pass the 86 bill. And so I created the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which the vast majority of Republicans in the House and Senate have not only signed but kept, and 2/3 of Republican governors and a lot of state legislators. Those are the people who've looked out at the American people. And the pledge is not to me. It's to the people of their states. It's, I will oppose, vote against, for governor's veto, any net tax increase, any effort to raise taxes. And when you make clear the line in the sand, people always coming to me, oh, you should tighten it, add to it. I said, no, everyone knows what it means. It is a line in the sand. It is the thing people don't cross. We were helped by George Herbert Walker Bush, who won because he took the pledge in the primary and beat Dole. He won because he took the pledge and came back from 14 points behind to beat Dukakis, who was a tax increaser. But then he broke his pledge by raising taxes, lost to a nobody from Arkansas, which at the time wasn't even a state or anything. And how do you do that? And then he lost the presidency. But then in 1994, that's when Republicans swept the presidency because 96% took the pledge. And since 94, no Republican has voted for a tax increase in Washington, D.C. No tax increase had passed if the Republicans had the House, Senate, House or the Senate. And by the way, before 94, the time when the Republican Party clicked and said, we're never raising taxes, for the previous 62 years, back to 1932, Republicans won the House and the Senate, won Congress twice in 62 years, once under Eisenhower, once under Truman. Since 94, when everyone took the pledge, they have won 18 years, control of the House and Senate, Democrats 6, split 6. That is the difference between the Republicans being the Washington Generals, who are only pretending to be playing out there on the field, and being not dominant, but 3-1 is pretty good.
That is pretty good. Yeah, and also it does seem like, I mean, whether you look at the high-speed rail in California or the ridiculousness uncovered by Doge, that the nation has a spending problem, not a revenue problem, and Democrats just refuse to acknowledge it, although I'm a little concerned with Republicans spending as much as they are as well, and I worry about the fiscal cliff everyone says we're going to if we could restrain the spending. The tax cuts we've got are I think, probably padding our economy in ways that people don't appreciate.
Oh, absolutely. Look, when you have economic growth, you actually raise more money if you take marginal tax rates down, both on individuals and on businesses large and small. You generate more wealth, more taxable wealth and income, and actually revenue grows. And that is the way we walked away from the debt after World War II, when it was roughly where it is today. It was bigger than the economy. Debt was more than 100% of the gross national product of the United States government. We didn't run a bunch of budget surpluses. We ran largely some deficits. Mm-hmm. But what we did do was we grew the economy faster than the spending. And we grew away from the debt. The debt became 20% of GDP, not 100, by growing the economy. And we need to focus on growth, which is why the $2 trillion in regulatory burdens we have is one way to get those costs down. And it gives you more growth. Having a pro-energy position instead of an anti-energy position gives you more growth, lower tax. And envy is a deadly sin. It is not a political program. And we need to focus on growth so that every American does better and not allow the politicians to defend. That's why you asked the insight. The flat rate tax is key. The flat rate tax is key. The reason the flat rate tax is key is it's very easy to reduce. Okay, everybody, we're going from 3, Louisiana now, down to 2. Well, what about the billionaires? Well, they're going from 3 to 2 also. Oh, okay. But if you say, okay, we're going to raise it. I'm looking at my map here. Illinois, right? Illinois, 2/3 supermajority Democrat, Chicago Democrats, complete Bolsheviks. They have a flat rate tax by Constitution. And their tax rate for the income tax is 4.95%. Not 14 or 15 like California, not 10 or 11 like New York. It's 5%. Why? Because they have, even the left wing, they're 2/3 supermajorities Democrats in that state house. They can't look at the people of Illinois and say, we've got an idea you're going to be so happy with that you'll all be pleased to pay for it. They know. They don't have one idea like that. They only have ideas. Look, I got some money for you guys. There are going to be a couple of people over here that'll be a little worked over. You might want to step out of the room. It's not going to be pleasant or quiet or nice here, but it's not you. We're not going after you. We're only going after them. They want to divide us into groups and mug us one at a time. That is what we have to stop. And that's why the flat rate, getting to a flat rate makes it very difficult to go back up, and it makes it very easy to drift down. We're all going down by 1/10 of a point. We're all going down by 2/10 of a point. We're all going down by 1/2 a point. We're all going down. We're floating down towards zero. We can be happy.
Grover Norquist, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for all the work you've done over the years to fight for lower taxes in this country. I really appreciate it.
Well, Eric, thanks for your leadership. The conservative movement is much better off for your work and your voice.
Thank you very much. Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform, here on Tax Day as we lament the checks some of us have had to write to Uncle Sam. I hope you guys got a good refund. It's one of the upsides of this tax bill the Republicans passed, is most people are actually getting larger tax refunds this year than they thought they were. Ladies and gentlemen, I will bring you up to speed on some breaking news here. The Saudi Investment Fund is going to cut funding for Live Golf. This is from the Financial Times. The Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund is cutting its support for Live Golf in a move that would jeopardize the future of a multi-billion-dollar project that sparked a civil war across the sport. An announcement on the future of the kingdom's involvement in Live, which has racked up huge losses since being set up 5 years ago, could come as soon as Thursday. The deliberations come as the Saudi Investment Fund announced a new 5-year investment strategy on Wednesday that'll narrow its focus as it reprioritizes spending. The Saudis have dumped a huge amount of money into F1. The car racing, they've announced a huge investment in the FIFA World Cup here in the United States. Live has gotten no attention really outside of Australia and South Africa. They haven't had crowds. They don't have people watching on TV. Everybody focuses on the PGA and the majors, and more Live golfers are disqualified from playing in the major tournaments like the Masters and the Open because they can't get points on the global system that golf players use when they play and Live. So it looks like Live is dying, and that is good riddance. Now, those of you on the phones, be patient with me. I want to take your phone calls, 877-973-7425. I'll take your calls when we get back. Before we move on, though, I just want to comment that here in the United States and in Georgia, in Athens, Turning Point USA had an event last night, and it was not well attended. The Vice President of the United States was there. I was stunned by the lack of a crowd. Even people who showed up noticed there weren't a lot of people. Erica Kirk herself did not show up because of threats. Candace Owens and other monsters have been spreading all sorts of theories about Erica Kirk related to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Horrible, horrible stuff, the way they have treated this widow. And the threats have gotten so bad that Turning Point USA said that obviously when she was there with the vice president, there would have been Secret Service protection, but the route to the conference, they were getting threats, and she couldn't show up because of internet trolls harassing this woman whose husband died. Horrible stuff. And then they had a very little crowd present. Just the whole thing is a sad, sad situation. Incogni would love to have you as a customer. Incogni is INCOGNI, incogni.com/Eric, ERICK. You can save up to 60%. They get your personal information scrubbed offline. There are a lot of data brokers out there who buy your information and then resell it. They buy your prescriptions. They buy what you're watching on TV. They buy your advertising model, and they build a model of you, and that's how you get the spam emails and the spam calls and the junk mail solicitations from credit card companies, insurance companies, and the like. Do it. So you see your scam phone calls go down. You see your junk mail go down when your information is taken offline. That's what Incogni does. It sends takedown notices, and they follow up constantly. If you go to incogni.com/Eric, they can do it for you. They've done it for me and my family. My information has been taken down from like 400 some odd sites now. Incogni.com/Eric. Incogni.com/ERICK. Use Incogni. Protect your privacy.